welcome back. This is Health Matters with me, Dishan Kumar, and today's topic we were discussing earlier with Dr. Helmi is asthma. Now, in today's show, in my shows, in all our episodes, what we try to do is show you perspective. So one of the most important things is a doctor's perspective, but now we are trying to show you a patient's perspective in dealing with asthma. So today with me is Dr. Could you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Katyana Azman and I am the resident child psychologist at Pantai Hospital KL.
So the doctor is the patient now?
Yes.
Okay. So let's start off with asthma. When were you actually diagnosed with asthma?
I was diagnosed as a child. I think I was about 2 or 3 when I first had problems. I've had pretty much childhood asthma. I think that's what they classify it as.
Okay.
And it, pretty much my whole life.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you actually was diagnosed, was it a very bad episode that you had when your parents were thinking like, oh, there's something wrong and things like that?
I think my parents were not completely too surprised because asthma does run in my family. So I had a lot of people in my family who were diagnosed with asthma. So when I started, if I recall the story I was told, when I started having problems with asthma attacks and, you know, just an allergy to dust and things like that, my family were not too stressed out because they'd seen it before. But I think, you know, having a diagnosis of asthma at a very young age, especially with kids and you're exploring the world and, you know, running about, it was a pretty difficult, you know, thing to live with at that age, I think. So yeah, they were a little bit stressed out, but they did a really good job of keeping me away from things that I'm not supposed to be a part of.
Now, talking about keeping you away from things, one
Yeah.
of the most common misconceptions is if a person has asthma, they can't really do physical activities.
Yeah.
Dr. Helmi actually talked about, he said, no, that's actually not true.
Yeah.
Did you actually go through that? When your parents were like, oh no, she can't really do
No.
that?
I think you know that is a common misconception. Of course, there were people in my family, especially from the older generation, that were just like, you know, no physical activities.
They can't do this,
they can't do that.
yeah.
You know, no swimming. You can't catch a cold. There were all of these, you know, old wives' tales of things. But I think my mom did a really good job making sure to not confine me to anything, and just let me try everything. So I personally found, you know, very activities that required a lot of exertion of energy, a little bit more challenging. So running and things like that were not really my strengths. But I did ballet for 10 years. I was in taekwondo. I made it up to red belt. I represented my state for field activities, so not track but field. And it was pretty manageable. And I think as I got older and was able to build up on my stamina, it did become a bit easier. I'm not going to be a cross-country runner or take on Usain Bolt at any point in time. But, you know, doing physical activities was absolutely possible. And having pets, I think that's also a thing, right? I grew up with a house full of cats. And so having pets was, at least for me, not a challenge. But dust was. Like, that was always a trigger for me. So being, if we ever, like, I remember when I went off to college and I moved houses. That was bad. So if being exposed to lots of dust does trigger me. So that is one thing that I do try to stay away from. So I'm a bit OCD when it comes to cleaning and things like that. But physical activity and stuff was you know, pretty easy to get around.
So as a working adult now, do you find that is there a lot of challenges for people who actually have asthma? Because there's this the thing with Malaysians and things like that, if there's something wrong with someone, you will be diagnosed by everybody else as, he has asthma, he can't really do this, he can't really do that, she can't really do this, she can't really do that. So as a working adult, there's a lot of people, the interesting thing about asthma is you can get it anytime in your life. It's not that you only can get it when you're young and things like that. So what are the challenges maybe you yourself face, like you're just at work all the time, you really don't get to use an inhaler that much and things like that? What are the type of things?
Well, I think it's in terms of convenience, I think that the delivery system for medications and for interventions with regards to asthma now are pretty good in the sense where they are easily accessible, they're quite portable, you're not lugging this big oxygen tank everywhere. So in terms of it impeding on your daily functioning or your social functioning, maybe not so much. But again, I speak from the perspective of someone who doesn't have a very severe form of asthma. It does limit you if you are, for example, you know, engaging with a group that's very physically active and stuff like that. So yeah, in those environments.
And you're a child psychologist,
Yeah.
so if children are, you know, jumping around.
Of
and this
course,
and that. You actually have
yeah.
to follow them and does that
Exactly,
affect
yeah.
you?
So, I'm always on the ground trying to play with the kids, and and sometimes it's difficult when kids come in and they're not well, and I'm having to stay relatively within their personal space. A lot of the time I catch the bugs that the kids have, and for me, if like I said, if I catch a cold, I will likely have an asthma attack. Or a couple of actually about 2 years ago, one of my patients had a very severe upper respiratory infection, and I caught it. And it was just, it was really difficult for me to kick off. And for me, especially working in an environment where everybody is often ill, that's why they're in the hospital. So I think it really depends on the type of environment that you're in. But being a working adult, so long as you kind of know what triggers you and what to avoid and how to get around it or to medicate it if it happens, it's pretty easy. But it's like, for me, like, I have constant control of the air conditioning. Like, you kind of just have to adapt. And then, and after a while, it just kind of becomes a part of you. But I imagine that this is a lot easier for people like me who've grown up with it. But like, for example, my mom was diagnosed with adult asthma. So she was only diagnosed in her 50s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so the adjustment for her was a lot harder because she'd gotten so used to being very active, and she's an interior designer. She goes to construction sites where they build things and there's cement dust everywhere. So for her, the adjustment was a lot harder because it came at a point where she'd gotten so used to doing all kinds of things. So I think it kind of depends on when you were diagnosed, how severe your diagnosis is, but at the same time, if you know what triggers you, you know how to work around it. It's all doable. But yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Final question for you: what would be your advice for working adults right now? What would be one thing they can do to try to handle asthma, or even people at home watching this, if they have or just been diagnosed with asthma? What are some of the things that you can actually tell them, like, hey, it's okay actually?
I mean, I think that asthma is absolutely not a death sentence. It is something that can make your day-to-day life difficult, but only as much as you allow it to. I think that you should not feel that you're not entitled to having as active or as exciting a life as you want to have. There might have to be accommodations that you have to make. You might have to have your inhaler on you, or you might have to avoid certain things, but that doesn't mean that you have to rob yourself of the experience entirely. So figure out, have a very open conversation with your doctors, figure out what your triggers are, figure out what you need in order to be able to function at the level that you need to, and then go from there. But don't feel that you have to be boxed in a corner and you can't live life, and you can't have ice cream even though all the old people say you can't. You can. And because at the end of the day, every illness, I feel, at least from a psych perspective, every illness drags you down only as much as you allow it to. And so that's kind of how I think about asthma too.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. This has been Health Matters with me, Dishan Kumar. Today's topic was asthma, living with asthma, and also asthma as a disease. We talked to both doctors, one doctor as a patient and also Dr. Hilmi, who actually talked to us about asthma. I think the most important thing that we can take from this episode is asthma is not a death sentence. You can still have a good life, a good quality of life. You just need to know what triggers you and also what type of medication, and also use your inhalers properly. This is me signing off. This is Health Matters with me, Dishan Kumar. I'll see you in the next episode.